Is he ready? Oh, is he ready? Oh,
Yes,
Brian,
he's
what's
ready.
that?
Fellas, sorry about that. Practice going a little long this morning, so I had to make sure I saw the back end of it just to see exactly what was going to happen on Saturday. And I'm here to tell you everything you need to know about the TCU Baylor game.
we didn't have any doubts about that ahead of time, man. Brian Estridge, the voice of the Horned Frogs, thank you so much for taking the time to join us this morning. We'll jump right into it. You're coming off the practice field where, I love talking to, you work for the program, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like you're on the inside, and without giving away any secrets, what is the vibe right now around this program after that demoralizing defeat at Kansas State, which by the way, I knew was a dangerous game. I'm sure you too, but you want to win that, obviously.
Yeah, I think everyone saw Kansas State kind of gaining on it, right? You saw it the week before against Baylor when they had a terrific opportunity to steal one on the road. I think you knew that they were getting that ship righted. I think the mood, and I hope I can say this, Pete, right now, is pissed off. And just watching practice, that these coaches are, these players are, they're disappointed in how they played against Kansas State. They can't really put a finger on it as to what went wrong. Obviously, you can talk about the couple of 3 turnovers, but these turnovers weren't caused by exotic defenses or anything that Kansas State did that confused TCU. They were just plays that are normally made by Josh Hoover and company that weren't made this week. And so, I asked Sonny Dykes last night on his coaches show, I said, as hard as it is for coaches and fans to do, can you chalk this one up as simply one of those games where, things just didn't go the way that you wanted to? And he looked at me and he said, I don't like doing that. I think coaches want to know answers. They want to be able to fix problems. They want to be able to correct things. I mean, there's a lot of work going on that practice field right now to try to just work on simple little things, like the lateral, the backwards pass that Sonny Dykes talked about post game. They throw that 1,000. I've seen them throw it. I haven't seen them throw it 1,000 times, but I've seen them throw it 164. I went back and counted, and they didn't throw it backwards at any point in practice. Now, you had a problem with a tackle who didn't get his guy right, so the defensive end's upfield. Josh has to kind of change his arm slot when he does that. The angle's a little bit different. You throw it backwards, and then, if you're Ed Small, you got to get on top of the football. You don't do that. DJ Rogers makes a little bit of an effort. All of a sudden, you wake up and you've given him 7 points. And, and that was a disastrous play that I think if you watch the game, Pete, it felt like it took TCU a couple of series to kind of get that out of that taste out of their mouth, too.
Yeah, well, I mean, and we're familiar with that here with Baylor. I mean, sometimes it just takes a minute to start the lawnmower up, period. Notorious for slow starts. This game is so easy to sell. You have 2 amazing quarterbacks. You have a rivalry game, and you have 2 teams who absolutely need this game. On the TCU end, what is the feeling like as far as this game against Baylor being a rivalry game and also being so important, a must-have?
Yeah, there is a big difference between the win or loss in this game. And I'm not just talking about the record. I just think if you look at the rest of the schedule, you've got a real opportunity here. Maybe at the beginning of the year, you thought the front end of the schedule was going to be a little bit harder than the back end. Now you kind of look at the schedule and you're thinking to yourself, well, BYU looks like they're really good. Cincinnati looks like obviously they're really good. Iowa State, is still going to be a quality team. So, you got some work ahead of you. This is one of those where you got to get the dub. This is one of those where if you don't get this one, you worry about things sort of snowballing. Now you got West Virginia next week, and then you got an open date, I think it is, after that, to sort of get ready for that gauntlet at the end. But this is that kind of it just feels like that teeter game. You're sort of teetering on 8 or 9 wins. Or is this going to end up being a 6 or 7 season? And the way college football is today, that makes a big, big difference. I mean, TCU won 9 games last year, and people didn't recognize it. People didn't know that it happened, and so that tells you what you have to be in college football. So I think it's a very important game that really will decide how this season shapes out. We're going to look back at the end of it and go, that's where it went good, or that's where the wheels came off.
Now, in order for it to go good, Josh Hoover has to have a big game.
Yeah.
He is one of the more fascinating quarterbacks in the country, not just because of the numbers, but because of the young man that he truly is. Again, I want to tap into some of your access. This is a defining moment for him in his career at TCU, riding the ship against the Baylor team in a huge game. Have there been moments or a moment where you have noticed, whether it's on or off the field, just how strong his resolve is, and where you've seen his leadership skills just shine right through?
Yeah, I think in the game before Lance against Colorado, late in the fourth quarter, there was a play that was an egregious error by an official, and I say this, I want to make sure I word this right, Pete, because this was not him making a scene or anything like that, but he was pointing out his frustration with the call to an official and to really, letting his teammates know that, hey, we've got to overcome this. And that was a point where we really saw some emotion from Josh that I think was important for this team to see. That, and then after the game Saturday against Kansas State, where he quickly sort of stepped up. Coach had made his conversation, had his conversation with the team. It was fairly colorful, as they say. And then Josh simply, without hesitation, without being prompted, stood up and said, "On me, my bad. This one's on me. I've got to be better. This team's only as good as I play, and I'm going to get it fixed." And he looked him in the eye and he said, "Fellas, I want you to know that I'm built for this. I'm built for these situations. I'm prepared for these situations." And when somebody tells you that, you got to trust them until they prove you different, right? And I think we're going to see a guy who really bounces back. That he prides himself on being even keel, and I think that you're going to see a little bit more of an emotional Josh Hoover down the stretch here, showing his team what he's got.
How has his game evolved? I mean, again, as a dude, I was lucky enough. His sister. When I was working in news in Waco, she was in Waco.
Yep.
And so she was just like always trying to get a feel for the business. Just one of the best people out there, just from a distance, getting to know her a little bit. And so I can say, okay, Josh obviously comes from an amazing family, but on the field, right, he has continued to grow as a player. Somebody like you that sees every snap, how has he refined his game?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different ways. One is, and it still will flash up every once in a while. When Josh showed up here, he was a baseball player and a football player in high school. He was a terrific pitcher. He was top 10 in the state in strikeouts at one point at Rockwall Heath. I think when he first got here, everything was a four-seam fastball. And now he's realized that everything doesn't have to be a four-seam fastball, that he can throw the changeup every once in a while, that he's got to put touch on it, that he's got to put air under it. And I think that, that has been one of the areas where he's really grown. The other area is progressions. He spent a lot of time this summer working on those progressions. If you come out and you watch Josh practice, it's funny, Pete, Justin Fuente was part of our broadcast team early in the season until he got a job with the college football playoff, former head coach at Virginia Tech and Memphis. And the first time he watched Josh practice, he turned to me and he says, "Man, I don't know what that kid's doing. Is he taking this seriously?" And I said, "Well, you got to tell me what you're talking about." And he would roll out to the left. This is 7-on-7, no rush, anything like that. He would roll out to the left, and he would make a difficult throw. He'd drop his arm slot and throw it, or he would try to loft it over. And what he was doing was playing in his mind what he thought he might see against that play. And until Justin knew that, he thought, "What's this kid doing? He's just jacking around." When in actuality, every play for Josh Hoover, whether it's with live rush or not, is an opportunity for him in his mind to play it out. And so he works on all the different pass angles and what he has to do, whether he's got a rush or not. And to me, that's a sign of a mature quarterback. Young guys show up here, they just want to make sure they make the right play. They just want to make sure, I got to get it to that running back. Okay, great, out of the backfield. Now he's, all right, I got that running back there, but I'm looking at that tight end, or I'm going to sidearm it here around a defensive end, all kinds of things like that. So I think that's the biggest way that I've seen him improve is how he practices, and the fact that every rep is important to him now.
Dude, that's great. That's great intel right there. One of the things you talked about prior to the season was TCU having a quiet offseason, right? Like wasn't a ton of noise. And I believe too to this, like that's healthy for a team nowadays. How, and you talk about like the cohesion with this group, guys been together, you know, a little bit more so than maybe some of the other teams around the Big 12. How has that paid off for TCU this year? Just guys and their bond being stronger than maybe the team that they're lining up across.
I think, and we can stick with Josh Hoover in this offensive line as a perfect example. You know, they're all roommates. They all live together. Josh has lived with offensive linemen since he came here as a freshman. I think that's important for them. They do stuff off the field. This is as tight a group as I've seen. There haven't been any kind of issues or. In fact, I'm sitting here, Pete, trying to think if there is even been now. There've been some pushing and shoving going on in practice, but there's not been. You know, you just don't see it. You just don't see any kind of drama like that. I think that's not only a testament to players, but I think it's coaches as well. I think what Sonny did in the offseason kind of cleaned up the staff a little bit. It wasn't much, it wasn't a lot, but he just took care of a couple little subtle things that needed to be fixed to where everybody is on the same page and everybody here is bought into what they're doing on both sides of the ball. And I think year 2 of Andy Avalos' system helps in that regard as well on defense. I think that, Kendall has the kind of coaches that he wants around him right now and running this offense. And the cool thing about Sonny is he gives them autonomy. Those coordinators, this is their side of the ball. He makes sure that they have all that they need to be successful. And I think because of that, it really trickles down to the players. When you see coaches that all get along, coaches whose families do stuff together, I think that starts at the top with Sonny, with the culture that he establishes, and it works its way all the way down to the kids. And then, you opened up a player performance center right before the season that, is second to none. And I'm not just talking about a weight room and rehab area, but, you guys have all heard about the snow room and the things that they do to practice for them. And so I think when they know that you're taking care of them, I think it goes a long way in their commitment level, both emotionally and physical to you.
All right, don't resent me for this next question, but you mentioned Kendall Briles, okay? Yes. And that's a guy who I feel like is morphing into a head coaching candidate, right? When we see these jobs open up, I'm like, why isn't his name being mentioned? What have you seen about him growing under Sonny Dykes, right? Just on the leadership side that makes you think, oh, this dude's ready.
There's no question that he's ready. I mean, not only has he become and has been for a while a terrific play caller and quarterback coach. The time that he spends with Josh is amazing. But the thing that he has done is when he walks in the room, and you can talk to defensive guys about this, he commands respect. Folks know Kendall as a former player or as a coach or as Art's son or whatever it is. But when you get to know him as a man, the thing I love about Kendall, and it's something, Pete, that I try to work on, that I try to teach my kids, is when Kendall is talking to you, he is looking you dead in the eye, and he does not waver. And I think that means a lot to these guys, and I think it'll mean a lot, wherever he lands, if he does get a head coaching job, and I hope he does one day. I mean, I hope all those guys that want to be head coaches get an opportunity. But I think that's the thing about Kendall, is you find out that he's a really, really good person who will look you in the eye and tell you the truth. And that's something that might be missing a little bit in society today. You get a lot of guys that tell kids and players and other coaches what they want to hear. And I think when you can tell the truth, in the end, that pays off. And I think that's what you get with Kendall.
And that's all you have now. We were talking before you came on. 7 coaches have been clipped already at the FBS level with Trent Dilfer. And it's like, man, last year, nobody was let go at the FBS level by this time in the season. And so I think you're right. Like, what else do you have at this point, right? Then that bond and that freeway to truth to the person you're talking to. That's a great point you bring up. Couple more things.
By the way, Pete, the way the world is today, as far as NIL and the transfer portal, you better be truthful, because it's going to come back to haunt you. How many times we played Abilene Christian earlier in the year. Stone Earl, the quarterback there, started his career at Abilene Christian, went to North Texas, went to Marshall. Guess what? Came back to Abilene Christian. Guys come back today.
Yeah.
So if you're truthful with them from the start, you never know when you might need them again.
Yeah, that's true. And that's some of those guys. you look at what's going on around the country, big time coaches that coach in big cities, like Willie Fritz in Houston, for example. Yep. I called a Houston game this year and he told us, hey, just like what happened at Tulane, some of these guys leave for what they believe to be greener pastures, and then they come back home because they had a fruitful experience with you. So that's you nail it there.
We used to have a women's basketball coach here at TCU, who's now at Kansas State, named Jeff Mitty, who's done a terrific job. And Mitty's philosophy was, no matter if you think you're going to get them or not, kids coming out of the Metroplex here in this big city, you recruit the hound out of them because there's a good chance you're going to re-recruit them. And if you've got some relationship with them on the front end, it makes the re-recruiting a lot easier because so many kids do go away and then elect to come back. So that's why it didn't matter if that's a 5-star and it's, she's headed to UCLA. Doesn't matter. I'm going to still recruit the hound out of her because there's a chance that she's not going to have a good time at UCLA. She's going to come back home to Nana. And when she wants to come back home to Nana, I've got a relationship with her.
I love it. Coming back home to Nana.
Yeah.
So when these two teams play, by the way, I got a broadcast nugget that I don't know that we could use, but do you know, I've heard on good authority that, and this speaks to the quality of these two men, Sawyer Robertson and Josh Hoover were both offered a boatload of cash by Tennessee this offseason, and both said, I'm good where I am. Because
of commitment. It tells you a little bit about it,
doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, how cool is that? This is an easy game to invest in and to root for these guys. With Sawyer, if there's been a thorn in his side this year, it's been his defense. With TCU, I've seen a little bit of that as well. How has the defense been doing, getting better over the course of the season? And how do you think they plan on stopping? It's not an air raid offense, but it kind of is out of Baylor.
It's an air raid offense with a physical running game, and which is a bad combination if you're on defense, right? But I think it's a real opportunity for this group to show what they're made of because they have been in difficult positions for much of the year. Against Kansas State, they were placed in really difficult positions. Was this TCU defense? And I thought they actually played pretty well, Pete. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I think it's a group that has, they've given up a few big plays here and there. The linebacking core is really, really good. I think Andy has dialed up some exotics that have gotten to the quarterback at times, but you've also seen success with a straight 4-man rush from this defensive line. I think the defensive backfield, we've had some safeties that have been out of position a few times, and I think that's been the biggest thing. We've also had some guys trying to go for the big play and miss, and it results in a big play for the opponent as well. So, I think that's been a fine line in the defensive backfield as to whether or not it's been truly successful or just kind of good. And I think it could have been a really, really good year so far, if not for a handful of those plays. But I just think that this defense, you just see it week in and week out. They're so much more comfortable in the Avalos system. It is a detailed, integrated, system that relies a lot on the guys on the field lining each other up, getting them in the right spot. And I think as these safeties get more and more time in it, I think it gets more and more easy, and that's a bad word to use, but I think they can play faster. And I think you're starting to see this defense play faster because of that experience.
How about, and this is the last question I have for you, who is a guy that isn't talked about enough playing for TCU that is just a great story that you root for? Because nobody knows these dudes like you do outside of the coaching staff. Someone who you think has an amazing story and you're like, man, I'd love for this guy to pop on Saturday because not only does he deserve it, but I get to share his story with everybody else.
Yeah, I think there's a couple. I think Joseph Manjak's an interesting story. That the transfer from Houston, started his career at Southern Cal, has been recruited 3 times by Sonny Dykes. Sonny tried to recruit him out of high school. He tried to recruit him when he left USC. He tried and recruited him here and got him here this year. The great story about him is, he hasn't had a great year yet, but he's had a really solid year. And I think we're about to see him explode. A couple of things about him. He's an old school guy. He doesn't wear gloves. He's a wide receiver that doesn't wear gloves. I love that. Apparently when he was younger, and I'm going to get the story a little bit wrong, but apparently when he was younger, his dad, he was hounding him about getting some receiver gloves. So his dad finally got him some receiver gloves, and he dropped 2 balls in a game. So his dad took them away from him, and he hasn't played with them since. But then the story this summer, though, he's tubing on one of the rivers here in Texas, and they see an older man in distress fall off of his tube, actually having a heart attack. And he and another friend of his race to him, get him out of the water, start CPR, realize they need help. Nobody's cell phone is working where this portion of the river is. So Man Jack takes off in a sprint for a really long distance through a field to get help. Help comes to the man, but what Man Jack didn't realize was he had just run through a field of poison ivy, and he didn't know this. Joseph Manchak was severely allergic to it. He missed the first 7-8 days of fall practice because he was covered from head to toe in poison ivy. When he got back out here, they literally had to keep him in a hoodie, and because of the medicine that he was taking for it, he couldn't get in the sun. So he was covered from head to toe like he was playing in a burqa. Out there. And so to me, those are guys that you pull for, guys like him. DJ Rogers is another one, a tight end, great story, that I think has a chance to be a really good player. Those are the kind of guys that you pull for that you want to have success. But Man Jack, for me, is a guy that I'm waiting for him to have the breakout game. Dinged his ankle a little bit early on against Kansas State, got the one catch, and then really couldn't come back from that. And so I'm hoping this week is the week where he breaks out.
Brian, man, thank you so much for the time. It's amazing intel and insight, and you're compelling and entertaining too, man. I really appreciate it. The voice of the Horned Frogs, Brian Estridge, appreciate it so much, man.
Pete, next time I'll tell Sonny to kind of cut practice a little short. I got an interview with Pete I got to do.
Yeah, we'll see how far that gets you.
All right.
All right, Brian. There he goes, the voice of the Horned Frogs, Brian Estridge. That was some really awesome stuff. I as somebody who's just always admired play-by-play guys and does play-by-play, Brian is easily one of the best in the Big 12, or you could say country. And also, he gets it. He's not just a talking head like that. That his ability to break the game down and the team down is super special. So thank you very much to him for sharing some time with us. We're going to step aside. The Pete Souza Show, of course, presented by Slovakics. We're going to talk to Scotty Swingler. We do want to get into maybe a little bit of a deep dive into this quarterback comparison. We know they're both amazing humans, but their football acumen, Scotty's calling one of them and their football acumen into question. Stay with us.